Okay. Hello and welcome to Plugin Along, a stream dedicated to the LOTRO plugins, where we even have some cats in the background. Let's see, will he stay in the chair? He will not.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
She's trying to tempt a cat into the chair with treats. We'll see how that goes. Last time, on Plugin Along, we restructured the save file of the deed tracker plugin, broke a bunch of things. That's sort of the nature of the task. Today we're going to look at some of the fixes I did over the last week, and then take a look at a pervasive IJK problem that deed tracker has for identifying a specific deed. We're probably going to break more things before we're done. As always, feel free to jump in and chat with your thoughts and questions about writing plugins in specific, plugins in Lord of the Rings Online in general, or just the game in even more general. Nothing really is off topic. So, in the meantime, let me go ahead and make sure we've got a desktop sharing. All right, okay. So, first thing to look at is where is our code? What kind of state is our code in? Because I've been playing around with things, and as we can see, it doesn't want to load. And so some of the files I was playing around with today can stay as is, and some of them need to go away. So we're going to bring up our source code repository. This is the fork program, fork.dev, wrapping around a Git repository. We're also going to dismount so my horse stops making noise. A thing that we can see is some of the files that I was playing around with for deed information today, they are in a bad state. I was playing around with stripping out language qualifiers and all sorts of things. You can see on the left there, the entire file is just different than it was. That's not great. We're going to go ahead and throw that away. Cool. With that, we can probably get deed tracker to load. Awesome. So that's good. That was not a good change to just be jumping in here with. What else do we have? We have some to-do file changes. We're just going to go ahead and commit those. To-do file changes. What else do we have? Okay. So these are some changes that I made over the course of the week just to get things working a little bit more smoothly. And it wouldn't hurt to kind of take a look at them and figure out, are they correct changes? Are they necessary changes? Okay. This one, I need to go ahead and stage this if possible. Or not stage, I need to stash it. Stash. Alright, in work, possible deed data structure file. Oops, well, I misnamed it. That's okay. Rename. Okay. So that's saved off in our stashes. So it's not lost work. It's just not going to be there right now. So we have a couple of different things. We have our main file, our main window, and our plugin functions. And there are some changes in each of these that were made following up what we did, which was updating how the save file does. Okay. Let's take a look at each one of those. In the main file, and I'm going to pop it up into the aforementioned Beyond Compare program, so we can take a look a little bit more easily, highlight what is different. So, a thing that I noticed was that the deed indices to deed IDs was going to be more generally useful during this transition period, where some of our things have those indices, the I, J, and K, and some of them also have the deed ID, which is the new way we're going to refer to these deeds. What do we mean by that? Well, let's come in and take a look. Whoopsie. Not by clicking that one. So, the deed IDs, deed indices, that looks like this. And so we can see skirmish ID this monstrosity, which is just how the game internally refers to this deed, equals an IJK of 1, 1, and 1. What does that mean? Well, it means that in your first tab, skirmish, in your first page, maybe first page, first tab, I can't remember. The naming is a little ambiguous. In the first one here, it was the first deed that was listed in the deed tracker. Tutorials, offensive, encounters. And we can see it down here. And so in the UI, if we come on in here, skirmish instances, the first one, if we don't hide completed deeds, we can see tutorial offensive encounters. Awesome. So this is the IJK problem that deed tracker has, is that it conflates information about a deed, tutorial offensive encounters, with the position it is in the UI. So in order to know about tutorial offensive encounters, you have to go to I equals 1, j equals 1, k equals 1 to see it. You can't just use that ID. And so what this is a workaround. If you have the ID, you can get the indices. And vice versa, if that temporary one that we had before, if you have those IJKs, or IJ save index in this case, you can get the ID. Awesome. So, if you have the IJK, you can get the save index. Save index is just a property in the IJK. So that's not a big deal there. So we can go back and forth currently between these indices and the deed ID. But ideally, eventually, we will stop using IJK to refer to a deed and only use it in terms of what is the visual layout. What goes in the first place, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so Eriador is tab 6. Then Breland is the first one under that, and Deeds of Breland is the first thing under that. So that would be 611. So that's what we care about for the user interface part of things. But under the covers, 611 here should just say, I am this other deed, and then we can grab that information. Okay, so that being said, we do need to remove this after that. In fact, let's put a big old to-do on there. To indicate that we can find this more easily with a search for to-do items, and also the IJK to specify what code changes. So this gives us a global access to deed indices to deed IDs instead of just during the import process. So we need to come in here to do uncomment next line after IJK code changes. And then I accidentally hit escape one too many times, closing that window. Fantastic. Okay, so we're back. Oh, just right. In chat had said howdy in response to me saying hello there. Well, hello if you're still in chat. So I'm afraid this stream will be a little bit less exciting. There's fewer giveaways, except the giveaway of knowledge. And it's a little bit more niche, I suppose. But welcome if you are still with us. Okay, so remove after IJK code changes. I love it. In fact, let's come on in here and stage this. Cool. I was noticing the question of what happens if you don't have any files. If this is basically a brand new plugin along, or some brand new deed tracker loading. And the answer was it misbehaved. Oh, that's the wrong window. This one. Okay, so I have here some pre-crafted files that are version 2.0, and I have here the directory in which they would go. And what I was noticing is if the directory was empty, and if I remembered to unload the plugin first so the directory would stay empty, then when I came in and loaded it, I was getting some error messages. And so what I wanted to do was sort of the minimum changes necessary to make sure that's not the case. So we need to pre-populate a few items that the version 1 to version 2 checks are going to be looking for. The existence of the characters list, the existence of carried out a version. So we need to set that if we have nothing in our data at all. Okay, what else do we have? So I had written if version 1 else if version, else if it's version 2. But that's a mistake. If we find a version 1 file out in the wild, seems unlikely at this point, we want to convert it to version 2. But now that it is version 2, we want to convert it to version 3. Otherwise, it is not going to work, and we'll be sad. So that's what this change was. Okay, we have a funny indentation thing going on here. What's up with that? All right, looks like that indentation was tabs. We'll go ahead and fix that. Okay, so we're just going to comment out this import statement and add a to-do line about what we're going to do to fix that. Okay, left a debug statement in there. Oops. And what I noticed was that if at any point after we were done updating from version 2 to version 3, if the plugin crashed in any way, then a lot of those changes we made to the core settings file didn't get saved out, which meant the settings file thought we were in version 2, and the actual character-specific settings thought we were in version 3, which was not a good look. And so if we explicitly call save server settings after we modify those settings, then even if we do any crashing from here on out, that gets persisted. Awesome. So, we should probably, that was various changes post stream to fix, to get the plugin loading. And that's all it is. The plugin may not be working, but it does load. Okay, so in the main window, and this should be mostly UI things, but there's some data stuff that gets munged in there, which I'm not a fan of. So in here, there's a function called getRegionExpanded. And I think this is the wrong place for this, but right now, in a new character file, there's no guarantee that the tabs and regions will have been created. Well, what does that mean? Let's go take a look at that. First, we're going to make sure we've got those values in the file. And we're going to go ahead and just load up, these files in, how about Sublime Text? It's a basic text editor, but not so basic as Notepad. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. We're not going to look at the deeds section, we're going to be looking at the UI section. And here it is. So for the UI, and again, this is a UI-based thing, so it's got that same IJK style of indexing. So on the first page of the first tab, is that expanded when the user is looking at it? And that is to say, when I have this one, when I click on Skirmish, should I expect Skirmish instances to be expanded? Similarly, should I expect Skirmish Lieutenant to be expanded? And we can see here it said expanded for the first one was true and the second one was false. And since we can save that information off, it's nice to just go ahead and do that. But what we need to do is pre-populate these entries, or each time that we're using those entries, this one, definitely not, this one, or each time that we would be referencing character UI tab region, go ahead and check for the existence of all of the items above it. Seems like we should just go ahead and make these things. And so, what is that looking like again in this file? We have UI, we have tab, we have tab and region. Interesting. I don't like the name of region in that. Get region expanded. I think that's a holdover from a previous naming scheme. So that's a thought that's occurring to me. That's not a very consistent naming, but it will work for right now. Previously, we were just checking to see if the thing existed, then get the value for it. But when we save out, we went ahead and made all of those exist first before setting it to true or false. So they will eventually exist. So if we can make that existing part of the basic sanity check that we do for every save file when we load it, then we can offload this work each time we're looking for, is it expanded, set it expanded. We can offload the work of, does the basic structure exist, and instead focus on getting or setting the value. So that is a thing. So I want to hold off on committing these. This other one, let's see. Is that possible to come on down here? What's going on in this other one? I don't remember. It's been a few minutes. We can see that. Okay. So there is a function called get deed save index, which converts an IJK into an IJ save index. And then we were groveling straight into where we think the save entries should be. Now, we just changed that. We just ripped the carpet out from under this piece of furniture. And so we also commented last week that we were going to add some functions, get save entry, set save entry, to have a single place to access this data in case we need to change it again. It could happen. So we have a get save entry, but it's, again, taking that deed ID. So for right now, we need a helper function that says, well, given an IJK, what is the deed ID? And so this is another one where I wanted to look at that IJK, at how we're going to do a transition between the version 2 and the version 3 stuff. And so I think having a second name function here, I don't think that's right. I think instead I want a function that says get ID from IJK, then we can pass it off to the real function, and then circle back around so that we can be getting rid of these IJKs. But regardless, once we have that save entry from that new function, we just make sure it exists and then use it. That is to say, the old system, there was always a save entry, which made for a very bloated save file. Now there's only a save entry if you have completed that deed. And so we check for if save entry, that'll confirm it's not null. That way we can go ahead and get the win, the date timestamp of completion to use in this label. Okay, so we're not going to actually commit any of those because they all need to change, I think. Okay, plugin functions, what's going on with you? Okay, this was the set deed complete function, and naturally it was tied in with how we were completing deeds in the past. So a save index probably needs to go away. The save entry just got moved on down here. And instead of groveling in to apply a save entry to a specific location, we just call set a save entry. And again, we're calling indices here. We're gonna change that up here on stream. We can see, especially if we disable minor differences, nothing else changed here except for white space. It unindented, and we lost the end statement there. So before we were making sure, oh, we've got to have a save index. Now we're no longer using those, so this whole indent can be outdented. Awesome. Okay, what else did we have? All right, get deed complete. Well, from an IJK, we used to have to get a save index, confirm that save index existed, then go grovel into the tree, the tables, get our save value, and then make sure it existed, and then look at that, is it complete value? Whereas now, if the save entry is not nil, it was completed. Hooray. Again, we're getting get save entry indices. We're going to change that up a little bit. But other than that, very good changes made in the middle of the week. Okay, here's where, in the check character data, we need to go ahead and go further. Not just making the UI table, but the entries for each of those tabs and pages. So we're going to hold off on that. In fact, I'll make a comment. Tabs versus spaces, gotta fix that someday. Populate each of the tabs and pages here. Make a to-do. Okay. Coming on down here. Remove this after data restructuring. This was the get save entry indices, which really just converted that IJK into what it needed to be Um, and set save entry indices. So what we want to do is instead replace those with simply a get deed ID from an IJK, and then use that in the places that are calling these functions. Okay. I added a little helper function. It's a little misaligned here. It looks more like this, which is to say we changed in the save file last time, we changed how things were saved. The keys here for the deeds, instead of spelling out when, and instead of spelling out method, we just said W and M, which felt a little silly, but across thousands of entries here, it felt to me a little bit more silly to spell out when for 4 bytes instead of just W. That might have been an over-optimization. I might want to go back and change that. But for now, W is when, M is method, and I got caught up in a place that was calling when, and I thought to myself, well, let's just have a helper function to get the save entry when, and then again, it's just a single place to change it. Same thing with method if we're ever using that. Just a single place to change it. If we decide to go back to when, it gets changed here and in the import function, and that's it. Nowhere else has to care what the underlying key is for that value. What else was interesting? So just some comments about what checkd data does. And in here, we needed to change how things are done, because this is where every save entry gets created if it doesn't already exist, which is not what we wanted to do. So instead, we just wanted to, let's see. Yep. Instead of creating every one of those entries, instead we go ahead and grab the save entry if it exists and use it to update the total number of completed deeds, and if it's not completed, the total number of LOTRO points and virtual experience that is available. Titharian asks, did you find a method to measure the time a function needs to run? Great question, as the cats make noise in the background. So I think I have a method in my head to do such a thing, but I haven't really done a lot of performance-based changes yet. The re-architecting that I'm doing at this point is more about sanity and maybe a more healthy way to store all of this information on the disk and in memory. But I think, again, haven't measured, but I'm pretty sure the big consumption of processor time, big consumption of startup time, is the generation of thousands of UI elements and the layout in a window and Windows controls within controls and within controls. So I haven't believed that any of the changes that I'm making right now are going to cause any significant difference in how much time it takes for the plugin to load. So I haven't actually done any timings like you're asking about Titharian. But it's a good point. It is a goal of mine to have that capability. And in the very near future, we're probably going to have a stream where we just kind of go through the process of inventing what that would look like. Spoilers, any control can request that the game let it know the next time a frame is rendered, essentially, with the set once updates function. And so it is possible for an arbitrary control to kind of watch time pass and do things. And so it'd be very possible to just say, kind of sleep during doing this initialization for 1/10 of a second. Like, just stop doing it, let other stuff happen, and then come back 1/10 of a second later, run for X amount of time or X amount of things. And in terms of the deed log, maybe just do one of the, populate one of these tabs per 1/10 of a second. So that's a way to kind of delay how much time it takes to do these things. But at the same time, if you have a control where you say, have a start time and have a way to use that set once updates to get a fresh game timestamp when you are done with things. You can have a control that acts as that sort of stopwatch or timer of how long did things take. Say I'm starting now, and then when I am done with that, tell the control set once updates, and the next time it gets control, it can stop the timer, as it were. So I think that's how it's going to look when we get there. Excellent question, though. Anyone who wants to run with that idea for a performance timer kind of class, feel free. It's not exclusive to me. Not at all. Okay. So another thing I'm trying to do is to stop naming variables in these all uppercase methods. Some of that's just holdover from how this was structured before. But it just, for me, if it's a local variable, I'd much rather it just be called a character, lowercase, camel case kind of thing. Okay, so that's kind of a review of where we are. Let's go ahead and get those of these committed that need to be committed. So that included this. All of that is good. Get D complete, that's great. This, we do want to commit it, but we'll hold off on just a minute. And those two we're going to hold off on. Stage that. Stage that. Great. Stage and all of that. Tellurian says, I did not find a satisfying method either. Did I get it right? You want to use a once updates function to measure time? Sorry for distracting you. Not at all. That's the whole point of me being here, is that we can have these discussions about what it's going to look like. So short answer is, let me go ahead and just have some Scratch notepad-like thing to write with. So if we have a control, we want it to have a operation start time equals, whatever, turbine.engine get game time, that kind of thing. And we want a function that says, this would be a function like capture current, get operation start time. So that's a function, and it's going to do something like this. And we want a function, this is very much pseudocode, operation get operation stop time. And what this is going to do is to say self set once updates to true. And we also are going to have a function update that says operation stop time equals. And this is the key thing, because I have been told, double check me on this, when you have been given control flow by LOTRO, each call to turbine engine get game time is just going to give you the time when that started. So calling it multiple times. Oh, Greg, let me get back to you in just a moment. I'm going to finish this thought I have with Tellurian and then answer that. So by doing a deferment where we get called a second time, we get access to a new get game time. So it would look like this, where we say set once updates is true, and then set once updates to false right away. So we only get called once. But the key thing is, whoever was interested in us measuring this now needs to know that we actually got called. So what we want to do is accept a callback in this and save it off somewhere, right? Save callback in a variable. And then here, we would go ahead and call that callback to say, cool, we've got a value for you, or we've got the difference, right? We could even say stop time minus start time, and say, here are the number of seconds, fractional seconds difference between the two of these, right? So that's sort of this timer in a nutshell. Is you tell the timer when you're starting, you tell the timer, hey, I'm done. The timer asynchronously, hopefully the next frame, but relatively soon, gets a fresh timestamp from the game, does a delta between them and says, here is what it was. I think that's kind of the minimum concept you can have for what we're interested in. So Tilian, I don't know, let me know if that makes sense. And now, Greg. Noob question, says Greg. That's okay, we all got to start somewhere. How does this work? Do you have access to the source code, or are you working with an API? Great question. So, as Tilian mentioned, there is an API. So plugins for Lord of the Rings Online, just like with many other games, are written in Lua. Lua is a programming language. And you can find a reference to the programming language Lua at lua.org. That being said, we are working with sort of a sandboxed, constrained version of Lua 5.1 because there are some things as a plugin in Lord of the Rings Online you can't do, like load websites and send network traffic off board and that kind of thing. Oh, X4711 says, there is a nice add-on that changes the color of the deed window so that one can better read the text. I would assume that that's going to be one of the skins available over at LOTROinterface.com. So if you're a person who likes changing how the visuals look, definitely check that out. So you know Lua and you're looking to write a plugin, the next place to go is the API documentation. Now you can find this over on the LOTRO Interface wiki. There's a link to it here in chat. There's also a downloadable version. That's the one I like to look at. It conforms to my mind a little bit, but they both have their benefits. And this gives you all of the ways you can interact with the game. And there are a few kind of hidden ones that the community knows about and uses, but for the most part, that's there. So for instance, if you want to write a message to the standard chat channel, you can use the turbine.shell.writeLine method, pass it some text, and that text will go to the standard chat channel, just like we can see in the background here. So, Greg is fun. I don't know how much that answers your question, but we write Lua code, call specific functions that are made available to us by Standing Stone Games in a turbine, and use those to interact with the state of the game to make UIs appear and that sort of thing. Okay. Tillerian says they're slower at typing than before at talking. Fair. It's difficult to type at verbal speed, and it's one of the reasons why I struggle to understand as I'm trying to learn Dutch, trying to listen to native speakers. And I'm pretty sure, I forget the exact stat, but like English speakers talking like 300 words per minute or something if they're talking a normal conversation, and it's hard to make your fingers type that fast. Like I can go fast, a little faster than 100 words per minute probably, but that's a third of the speed that we need for that. Greg says, answers perfectly, thank you. You're very welcome. If you have any other questions, feel free to throw them into chat there. Okay. I was looking here. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of work our way through each of these not quite right solutions that I threw together over the last couple of days and make them better. Now I'm going to have a cough drop in my mouth because there's still something going on my throat and it keeps drying out too fast. I'm going to try not to clank it against my teeth over and over, but, let me know how that goes for you. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going through and making sure each tab and region exists. But those are pretty static things, and we should be doing that in the plugin functions here in check care data. So let's go ahead and load open those couple of places. So we had main win, and we had plugin functions. In fact, let's go ahead and split them up a little bit here. Do a vertical split. Nope, don't want that. Okay. We're going to make this go a little bit wider. So ideally, these checks here will no longer be necessary. Oh, hey. So, Primix, you have asked a question that I am not qualified to answer. Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I am not an SSG employee, and so I can give any answers that I give are not official and are just based off of information that employees of SSG have released publicly. Oops. Thank you so much, Little Red Hood. I forgot to push enter. So, but Permix asks, is there a chance to be able to send offline character invitations to kinships in the future? It would really help my roleplay between my own characters. Totally get it. It's a thing that has definitely caused consternation for many players that have either small kins or just aren't online when some other kinmates are as well. Short answer is, I suspect that that is not high on the list of things that they are going to address in the near future, but I really don't know. Because there is an easy quote-unquote workaround, which is to say, wait until the character is online and then invite them, it seems like the kind of thing, which is a lovely quality of life improvement, but probably has deeper technological reasons why it exists than just, we just don't want to let it happen. Yeah, so right now, every kinship invitation is synchronous, which is to say, I issue the kinship invitation, and that player immediately gets it and chooses what to do with it, right? So it's not like a mail message that can sit around whether that it can be sent to a character whether or not they're online or not, and when they are online, they can kind of see them posted up. So right now, the code for kinship invitations, there's no setting that says allow offline. The setting would be rewrite how this is done so that kin invitations can support some sort of asynchronous model, a lot like mails. Or maybe you could embed a kinship invitation into a mail. That would be kind of cool. It would work around the problem. But the point is, nothing happens in a vacuum, and right now the effort to get from online characters to offline characters, it's much more than just a simple line of code. And at a guess, they probably have a lot of other things that are also nice quality of lives that are either easier or more important to a wider variety of people. So yeah, that's a great question to kind of bring to the community manager, Cordovan, either on the forums or in his Friday stream, which, I don't know, we have a Friday command here. Friday. There we go. So you could check out LOTRO stream on Friday at noon Eastern Time, United States, and throw it out there. Sometimes they're able to take that back to the dev team. Sometimes they know off the top of their head, that kind of thing. So Tillerian in chat points out that they created an alt account just for the reason to be able to invite characters to their personal kin. That works great if you're on a free-to-play server, which is most of them. If you're on Treebeard or Shadowfax, you'll have to get a little bit more creative. So, Premix, sorry, I don't have any specific details for you, but hopefully you're able to kind of charge forward either with an alt account like Tellurian suggested, or hook in some friends to help you with that. Okay, great question. Someone asked me once, would you like to work for Setting Stone Games? And it's an intriguing question because, from the outside, it seems like a really cool and fun job. I'm sure there are days when they feel otherwise. But since I live in the Netherlands and they don't hire outside of the Northeast region of the United States, it's a moot question. I don't have to think about it too hard. Perfect says, thank you for taking the time to answer anyway. You're quite welcome. Like I said, if you want a slightly more chance at a slightly more authoritative answer, tune in on Friday. Tillerian did not think about the legendary servers. It happens. It's easy to forget that they require a subscription to log in. But that's okay. That's weird. Oh. My chatty was doing something very strange with highlighting for a moment. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to go find these two places. So we want line 575 over in the plugin functions. And we want to have at the ready the lack of these files. So I just went ahead and deleted those files. So what we would like to do is we want to go through each possible tab and region. And we actually have a reference for that. The deed info, ENDE, and FR have all of that for us. Or at least those are the ones that get shipped. And we can see that we have the deed log page tabs. We have deed log pages. So we want to go ahead and iterate through each one of these and make one of those. Nope, I don't want to do that. Okay, so this is how we're going to get those first 9. Is we're going to go ahead and for I gotta learn how to iterate in Lua. It just is not coming together. Oh my goodness. There we go. So this is essentially one we want to copy the behavior of. So for I equals 1 to the maximum of deed log pages, which is going to be 9. But we do want to support the addition of multiple pages and tabs. And so for j equals 1 to the maximum of deed log pages of I, which is to say, for the first page, we have 2 tabs. For the second page, we have 14 tabs, and so on. So we want to go ahead and with this I, we want to make sure that tab is there. So car data, and that's going to be car name, that's going to be UI, that's going to be I, and really we just want to check to make sure that it exists. So if not this, then this equals a new table, end. Caledonian in chat, great question. What are the best choices for plugins from LOTRO interface as a beginner? I have heard of a few, but I do not want to have excessive crashes because I have an unstable build. Little Redhead has gone ahead and triggered the exclamation point plugins command. These are a list of widely used plugins that are reasonably stable to use. One thing I would say is that beyond a couple really broad plugins, there are some plugins that are just can be very class specific. There are Minstrel plugins and Warden plugins, and so there are also plugins that are very beneficial if you are a raider. There are, and so on. So it can be helpful to know what class you are, what type of player are you? Are you doing raids? Are you just getting into the game and just want something to make moving around the world a little bit easier? That kind of thing. That being said, LOTROinterface.com. Some of the ones that are in that chat command there that I would highly recommend. The travel window 2, currently supported by Hios, last updated in early December, looks like this. You get a grid of all of your possible travel icons in one place and not taking up your quick slot bars. So it's very handy from I just want a button to click on to go to a place. When you have this, there'll be a little suitcase on your screen. You can click that to open the travel window, and you can set your travel window up into text mode, carousel mode, which I've never found a use for, and icon mode. And then, yeah, it's pretty great, especially if you are a hunter. As you have seen in chat, D-Tracker is one I have done, and it's what I'm currently working on making better under the covers here on this stream and in my copious spare time. It's a alternate way of presenting deeds in the game to you, and it can automatically detect when you complete deeds and kind of check them off. That was sort of how it began, was as a glorified spreadsheet for tracking which deeds I have and have not done yet. So if you are a person who likes completing deeds, this is a one that can just sit in the background and just kind of remember which ones you complete for you. X4711 asks, question regarding deed tracker. If I want to use that for an existing character, I need to import character data. You don't need to, but plugins do not have a way to know which of your deeds are already completed from within the game. So if you have a lot of deeds that are already completed, you could go ahead and check them off manually. You could just not and just have your deed tracker and deed log be out of sync. You can also check out deedtracker.lifebeyondtheshire.com, the manual, and there's a section there that will tell you how to import your deed log data. And this uses a third-party downloadable tool called LOTRO Companion, which is able to import things like your deed status from the game, and there is a accompanying hypertext application in the deed tracker plugin directory, and it knows how to go and grab that information and make a plugin data file incorporating all of that. So what does that look like? What is that's a lot of words. What does that actually look like? Let's go ahead and make sure. First of all, we don't want our deed tracker to be running, so we're going to hit unload all on here. And we're going to go ahead and make sure we don't have any character information. So we're going to load. We can see none of our deeds have been completed. Cool. Unload. And then we're going to go ahead and launch the LOTRO Companion. Now, it takes a while to download and unpack the zip file that it comes in. And then I have to figure out where it launched on my computer. Aha. Okay, so when it launches, it looks like this. If this is your first time using it, you'll want to double check that your LOTRO client path is correct. It'll probably be correct, but you do want to double check, otherwise imports won't really work. You hit the import button, you go ahead and start. And the import screen will go ahead and check on various things from your character. Cool. We're actually really done there. And the other thing we do is go into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Cube Plugins, that's me, and Deed Tracker, and you're looking for the HTML application, Import Deed Completion from LOTRO Companion. Run that. It'll tell you what it found. Let's make that smaller. So for instance, we could import Treebeard Affodil. That's me. Boop. Awesome. But then the final part is making sure that you load up Deed Tracker. When you do, you'll get not only your normal window, but you'll also get a LOTRO Companion import, where we can see I have 1,111 deeds completed on this character, which is actually pretty cool. I like that. Maybe I'll just stop doing deeds, he said, not at all seriously. So these are all the deeds that LOTRO Companion thinks are marked complete that are not completed in my deed tracker. So we'll just expand these as an example. If you import, we'll go ahead and import all those. Done. And that's it. Yes, 1,111. No, 1,011. Yes. So that's it. The import process is super fast if you already have LOTRO Companion installed. If not, it's you get slowed down a little bit. You can find more information about it at that link there. But that's really it. We just saw 11,000 deeds get marked as complete from that import process. And then if you load, you're not going to see that window every time, just that first time. You'll choose whether to import or not, and then you'll not see it again. But that's would have been a pain to go and check off all 1,011 of those deeds. And so the import process makes that a lot easier. But that all stems from the fact that plugins in LOTRO do not have access to your deed log. So we can't tell automatically, the way we can with recipes, for instance, we can't tell which of these is complete. So we're reliant on either you, the player, doing it by interacting with the plugin, or using an external tool like this, where we can kind of step outside of what a plugin can do in a nice and easy way. Cool, okay. Yeah, another side effect of this process is if you care about when deeds are completed, well, that's not stored in the game client as far as I know. And so when we do this import process, they were all completed now. And so we can see that timestamp here. It was just 8:35 and 31 seconds. That's it. Cool. Caledorian says, I like to complete deeds in the game. It gives me a way to build up my LOTRO points so I have enough to buy any new expansions when available. Absolutely. That was actually one of the reasons why I was interested in the deed tracker. Let's go ahead and reset our data right there. As if you come on in here, in the deed tracker, it will tell you how many LOTRO points and virtue experience are available from the deeds in each of your pages and tabs. So for instance, if you were to complete everything in the Shire, is Yonder Shire under there? It is. It doesn't give as much. Okay. So if you were to complete everything in the Shire, you would get 155 LOTRO points and 50,000 virtue experience. If you were to do everything in the Lone Lands, that's another 180 LOTRO points and 38,000 virtue experience. And it will show you exactly which ones have what. So your most bang for your buck in the Lone Lands, just doing the quests, which involves 45 total quests, will net you 35 LOTRO points and probably get you pretty close to all of your exploration and slayer deeds as well. If you're doing a lot of slaying on landscape anyway. If you like finding LOTRO points and knowing how many are left in a region, you might find this a useful way to do that as well. And then travel window, deed tracker if you like deeds, and Titan bar can be a very nice way to organize information, but it does take a little work to get it set up. So if I were to come in here to Titan bar and then sort by date, because there's been a lot of iterations of Titan bar, I would find this Titan bar for Duriel. Awesome. And this is... There's a lot going on here, and it's perhaps beyond the scope of what we're doing right now. But here's an example of all the various pieces of information you can pin to, for instance, the top of the screen. What your level is, maybe what your character name is, character class icon, how much money you have, and that money can track across the entire server. So it'll tell you how much money you have on each of your characters on that server and in shared storage. As well as how much inventory space you have, shortcuts for reputation, shortcuts for currencies, all sorts of stuff. And, a quick little way to see what time is it in the game, what time is it local and server time, and, is it gloaming or not, that kind of thing. So Titan Bar has a lot going on. So if you like that idea of kind of collecting information together in a thin little bar at the top of the screen, give it a try. Okay. So, let's go ahead and do another import. And we'll go ahead and load our deed tracker back up. Okay. So, bam. So pleasing. Okay. Coming back into the code. So we're iterating through each of these deed log pages. which is to say 1 through 9. And if that entry doesn't exist, go ahead and create it. And then for each sub entry in there, we want to do the same thing. So so we have that same idea. For j equals on to the table max, do, and then we're checking if that ij entry does not exist, go ahead and make it. So what does that mean for here? In our care data, we're checking for the existence of UI. Well, that's going to happen in this check care data, which happens every time we load data. We're just going to verify that that looks sane. So we no longer need that. What about tab? Well, that's care data UI I. So that one's fine. And then region, that's J, and that one's fine. So this whole thing is if true. Well, awesome. We don't need that anymore then, do we? So local expanded equals false. Well, that was before. Now we know that this is all going to be there. So we can consolidate. Local is expanded equals this. Now, is it useful to go ahead and not just return? For me, it is. I tend to write code like this, where we grab that local variable and then return it, even if we're not doing anything with it, because inevitably, I will come across something where I'm like, this should work. Why is this not working? I don't know. I need to hit a debug statement in here to tell me what the value of expanded is, right? Is expanded for tab, region, and then dump out is expanded, right? And that just flows easier if you didn't, if this was a return statement, I would first have to break it into an assignment and then a return statement before I could interpose my debug statement between them. And so by just writing it out in the first place, and this is also sort of I got this habit in Visual Studio with visual debugging. It's just very nice to be able to pin a breakpoint at the variable initialization, so you kind of inspect all of the stuff going into it, and then see what the result was of that variable assignment, and then get into the return statement. So, is it fewer lines of code to just return the thing? Of course. Is it less effort? Marginally. It's a little bit less typing, but is it useful? No. I mean, a half-decent compiler or interpreter is just going to squish those back together anyway. So you're really just saving a line of code on your disk drive and consolidating some vertical space. And for me, having them separate and ready to go, it's usually worthwhile. Also, and this is more of a me thing than anything else, if I have a line like this, then there's a lot of stuff there that is not the word return. And it is very easy for me to miss the fact that I am doing a return, partially because I've trained myself to expect that return is going to be returning a simple statement, usually the last thing in the function, return blah. And so for me, it helps to call out that this is the thing that we are returning. Because oftentimes a function is doing more than just grabbing a value and returning it. Usually it's doing something more complicated. And doing a complicated thing in the expression that you're doing the return in does not work for my brain. But we've got our debug statement. We can unload. We can go ahead and reload. And boop, we've got all of our is expanded. And those are just iterated through when we go to a place. Interesting. We have a bunch of nils. It is possible that the fireworks smoke outside is not helping my throat. Alright, so what's up with that? If we look at our save file, we didn't have expanded value in a bunch of places. So we are going to want to have that. Now, right now, expanded is the only thing being saved in this UI information, but that could definitely change. So, what we want to do is car data, car name. Why am I typing things when I could be copy pasting them? I don't know. I try to have that lesson for everyone. Copy paste. Okay, so populate each of the tabs. Really, we just want to populate it if it's not already there. So, if so this new table will instead be expanded equals false. No, I'm wrong. That needs to be two separate things. So, because either we're creating it here or it was already there and empty for some reason. So, if expanded equals nil, then we're going to set that expanded to false. Let's see what that looks like if we pop in. First of all, deleting all of that character information, and then seeing what happens when we initialize it from start. So we're going to go ahead and find our text editor. Nope. Okay, so now we can see 1, expanded, 2, expanded. All of these are set to false. Awesome. If we go ahead and change some of those values, say by opening up Arid and Breland and leave, then we can come on in. These are sorted in a random order, but we are looking for 6. There we go. So number 1 expanded equals true, 3 expanded equals true, and the rest of them are false. Awesome. So we can see that our initialization is doing great. X47 wonders if a warm cup of tea would help. It might. Cold water may not be the optimum thing for my throat right now, but it is what I'm used to. Okay, so we have our UI. Right now, again, all it's storing is the state of expansion on those tabs. One of the things I would love to be able to do, if we can figure out how to, is to scroll, for instance, how much this, to store how much scroll this scroll bar has done. So we could kind of populate how far down are we on the page. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but it's on my would love to do list. And similarly, you can have scroll bars for just these individual regions, like Breland, and then we could store those as well in this structure. Little Redhead usually starts with a hot cup of tea, and it's cold by the end of their stream. Yeah, I know they sell like desktop mug warmers that you can like plug into USB or plug into a wall outlet. So I think that's a problem that could be solved by paying money, both for the thing and then for the power to run it. But then again, cold tea is not the worst thing in the world. Okay, so we have added in our population. So make sure each UI tab is present. And a default value for exists for each entry. And that, of course, is way too long of a line. So we're going to go ahead and make that the second one. So make sure each UI tab is present. And we're going to say page/tab is present and default value for each entry. Awesome. So there we go. By consolidating that information here, this is going to be called each time we load a file. So if it's missing from a file or something is just a little malformed, we're going to get it up to snuff here, which means we no longer need that in either the get region or set region expanded functions. So that is now moot. That is now moot. Expanded equals is expanded. Awesome. Let's give that a try. Let's come back in and have that worst case scenario where we don't have any save file whatsoever. We'll go ahead and load it up and just unload straight away. No problem. Load it up again. In Skirmish, we'll go ahead and expand Skirmish instances. Hopefully it'll be easy to see. And we'll come on in and we can see UI11 expanded equals true. And we can do a quick little search. It's the only one that's true. There's 61 non-expanded tabs and 1 expanded tab. Awesome. Just what we wanted. Cool. So let's come back into Fork here and take a look at this. So here we can see that we've kind of gone the other way. Instead of adding a bunch of code, we've gone ahead and removed it. So the big thing was this used to be stored concurrently with deed information. I don't know what I was thinking when I did that. It was not a good idea. Except that it already existed, so shoehorning one more piece of information there just seemed like an idea. So instead, we have a parallel structure for the UI with its tab, region, and values. And so that change is great. We'll just go ahead and put that one in. And then the get used to be checking to make sure that this thing existed. And we don't have to worry about that. We're going to go ahead and just auto-populate it. So instead of setting a value and conditionally getting it, again, we're changing from deeds to UI, but we're just grabbing that value. Love it. And in our plugin functions, I've gone ahead and not deleted a comment. And in our plugin functions, here's the function. Here's the code that actually supports that. Awesome. Bam. Make sure UI save structure is fully populated. Now, this actually runs this sort of the same course as what we were just moving away from, which is that we had been storing a save structure for every deed in the game, regardless of whether it was completed or not. And now we're doing the same thing. We're storing this value of is it expanded or not for all of the UI elements, even if you've never gone and seen tab 2, or you've never clicked on the war, we're still storing that information. Do I feel like that's a problem? Not really. It's not a very large amount of data. We're using a single key with values of true or false for the leafs, and there's just, it doesn't feel very compelling to try to save in this particular instance. We're not going to have more and more and more of these. We'll get the occasional addition. But all concern I have, just thinking about this as a completely different concern actually, what happens when we get something like Cardalon and Swanfleet, which we just did, that get inserted in between things? They're now the 4th tab under Eriador. So what happens there? Sure feels like we should be able to support that. Because right now, internally, in the deed tracker, it's the last one, because we don't have a way to support that. Gotta think about that. The deed tracker was never made in mind with the ability to insert these tabs in, because we'd never seen it happen. They were always being added at the end. Or I should say, not that we've never seen it, I've never seen it. In the couple of years I've been playing the game, I've only seen these tabs added to the end of the page. Specifically Ravanian, as it got filled out. We saw Wells of Langflood, maybe. We definitely saw Elderslade come in, and Blood of Azog, and Gundabad. And so I was just very used to seeing these come in on the end. And here we got one inserted in the middle, and it just messed with me. Because all of our stuff has been setting with this page tab index, and now what? So, secretly, all of the things we're doing over the past couple of weeks and stretching out into the indefinite future is basically supporting Swanfleet and Cardalon in the UI going in its proper position under Eriador instead of dead last, because that's the only place I could put it. Holy moly, it's 104,000 virtue experience available there. Gotta get on that. So, excellent. Am I worried about this? No, but I am worried about doing numerical indices like this separates it out from what's actually there in a way that worries me. Like, why index it as 1 when it could be skirmishes, and then we just have a lookup that says skirmish is 1, or skirmish lieutenants is 1, 2. That's a problem for later, but I don't want to forget about that. When we index by ij equal k equal, well, ij equals 1, 1, skirmishes / skirmish encounters, instances. We don't allow for easy changes, for easy insertion of a new tab not at the end. What if our indices, I, j, were names of tabs, and there was a lookup to convert that to the actual UI order? Question mark. Same thing with the Cardalon thing. Yeah, what if each of these tabs, if they were indexed instead of a number by Breland? It would just be an internal code thing. We'd still have a translation of that for French and German. But that would say, hey, Breland should be order 1 under area, which is 6. So that should be 6, 1. And what was Lonelands, we would have had said was 6, 4, and now we'll just say is 6, 5. Stormfleet and Cardalon is 6, 4. Each of these would have an increased index, but anything relating to them wouldn't change. Wouldn't even know there was something wrong or different. I'll have to think about that. But right now, the way thought of this specifically when looking at UI expanded save structure. It will be broken as soon as we move Swan Fleet in Cardalon. Okay, so it's out of my head. I don't have to think about it anymore for a non-zero number of days, because that's not what we're doing today. Okay, so back to here. We have our main win changes. Not quite ready for that. Awesome. We have our 2 changes here. We have our plugin function there. Make sure UI save structure is fully populated. Done. Awesome. So, where are we? We have a couple of plugin functions, get, save, entry, indices, and I want to not do that. So that's line 662. Let's come take a look at that. So we were helping out get save entry and set save entry. But what we really want is to not do that at all. And instead, the calling site should be able to convert IJK to deed ID. So let's just double check. Where else are we using deed ID here? Deed ID, great. That's pretty much it. So we want a function, and again, this is going to be removed after data restructuring function, get deed ID from indices. And one has to wonder, do we need character? We don't. Okay, so we just need those indices I, J, and K. And what we're going to need to do with that is rip it actually just from this function that was trying to roll it all together. Save and get save entry indices. It was trying to use I and J and the save index K to get a save entry. Instead, what we want to do is most of this. We want to get that save index. And we want to go ahead and let's see. So local wow, if we can't get a deed, then that ID, that's just going to be a problem. So let's assume that we're going to be successful. We want to check for the validity of this entry. Okay. So we'll go ahead and just have a warning message, error message really, if we don't find an indices. But in the meantime, we do want that. So what we want to do, and with this lookup, we want the deed ID. And at that point, we're good. Return deed ID. If we get to the end here, that's a mistake. We can just return 0. Possibly return nil. Not sure. How about nil? That's more likely to gum up the works if it happens. Should not happen. Okay, so this is a function that is going to go ahead and, using just ij and k, it's going to first look up the save index because that is how the deed IDs to indices works. Sorry, deed indices to IDs works. We have I and j and the save index, but we can get that save index from ijk. Super easy. It's harder to go the other way around, but we could do it. So, making sure that the I and j and save index actually refer to something, we then have the deed ID, because that is, again, nope, that one. Once we have I and j and k, we're just getting a number, and that is the deed ID. And we return it. Awesome. So, instead of what we had, which was, for instance, I may have accidentally committed the use of those functions. It's okay, we're going to get it back. So, on main win, around line 750, let's go take a look at that. Okay, so we're using get save entry indices. We want to not do that because that's about to disappear. So instead, we're going to have local deed ID equals get deed ID from indices I, j, k. And then save entry, we have get save entry, no more indices, and we have character, and we have that deed ID. Caledonian said, so I installed a compendium. LOTRO interface plugin is running, but how do I populate my deed tracker again? It's currently empty, and I used compendium thing to generate info, and it completed it, but didn't fill it in on the deed tracker. Absolutely. Great question. So in the deed tracker window, and this is going to be in Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Cube Plugins, Deed Tracker. You're going to scroll down and find the Import Deed Completion from LOTRO Companion file. If you have extensions on, it'll be the only .hta file. If you don't, it'll be of type HTML application. And when you run it, you're going to get a window that looks like this, hopefully. If you get any sort of an error message, it might be beyond the scope of us to address here, but most people run it no problem. And you'll find an import button next to whatever character it is that you're looking to import into the deed tracker. Once you hit that import button, you'll see a message down here. This if you see both reading and writing, then you're done. You can go ahead and close that window, and you'll just need to make sure you reload the deed tracker. So if it was already loaded, unload it, load it back up. And you're going to get this LOTRO Companion import window. give it a try. Let me know how that works for you. Okay. So we got the deed ID from the indices IJK, and we'll be able to get a get save entry from that. So the real question is, get save entry indices, where else is that used? We can see get deed complete, which feels very much like get save entry. I don't know why I made it the second function, but right now it's used in a bunch of places, so can't fix that right now. Local deed ID equals get deed ID from indices, and then we can go ahead and say get save entry character deed ID. Awesome. So at this point, nothing else is using get save entry indices, so we're done with that. Okay, so other question, set save entry indices. Where's that being used? And the answer is in set deed complete. Awesome sauce. So 2 questions. Is save entry being used anywhere else? Oh, that's the save entry. I was thinking the save index. Bah. Okay, so what we want is for this to be set save entry deed ID. Awesome. So same thing, local deed ID, and that's sort of assuming we don't already have one of those. Uncertain. And we should probably just hoist that all the way up because we're going to want that in numerous places. So again, get deed ID from indices I, J, and K. Great. So now we have the deed ID that we're talking about here. And we can do the same thing. Set save entry character deed ID save entry. And at that point, no one else is referencing this, and we can remove it. Less code is better code. So get deed ID from indices. I'm not sure if that's going to need to get removed. We're always going to have this concept of I, J, and K from the UI's perspective. But I'm really tempted to get rid of the whole number thing anyway, as mentioned. And for the most part, just use names representing the things, and then at the very last step, have a way to translate that into a UI ordering. How will we... I guess the thing is, in the UI's perspective, I'd very much like to store the deed ID. I think the answer is probably. I want to have a single question mark, not 3. I'm not that uncertain. Okay, so let's come on back in here, and we can see removed IJK to deed ID helpers in favor of a lookup function. Yeah, it's sort of meaningful words. Okay, so what's gone on in the main win here? Let's get a little bit more sensibility here. So we were getting a save index, and we were using that to grovel into the table structure. Now, instead we get deed ID, and we call a function. The only question is, does that thing exist? And if it does, go ahead and get the win and use it. Love it. So we're going to go ahead and commit that. We're going to go ahead and get that indices, that change, this change, and the actual lookup function. Awesome. Alright, I did not hear back from Caledorian if that was working for you. I'm curious if you hear this and are still in chat. Let me know how that worked out for you. But in the meantime, we've done a little bit of IJK fix-ups, which was, in theory, the whole topic of this stream. Every place, in theory, every place that we're using IJK, still lost trying to find it. All right, let me... So, Caledonian, do you have the link to the help file or the help documentation here in chat? Hopefully you have this open and are following sort of along as you try to make this happen. The key thing is, I think, where you say you are, is that you did the import in LOTRO Companion, but it sounds like you haven't yet run this file, the hypertext application, and it's going to be in your documents, the Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, Cube plugins, deed tracker, and it's called the horrendously long name import deed completion from LOTRO Companion. So it sounds like that's where you need to be, and this is where you'll find it in the help document. This section here. Okay, give that a try, see how it goes. I appreciate sometimes we go a little fast on the stream and it's live, so you can back up a little bit, but it's not quite like a YouTube recording quite yet. Although these do get reposted over on the Life Beyond the Shire YouTube page. Okay, we are running into what I would guess is our last half hour of streaming here, give or take a little bit, depending on natural stopping points. So, if you've had any thoughts, questions, or concerns in the back of your head that you wanted to get out this stream, now's a good time to get those into chat, so we have a chance to talk about them. As I said before, it doesn't have to be about plugins, although it can be. You could want to talk about the Before the Shadow expansion. You could want to talk about whatever. Maybe I'll even know what you're talking about. Okay, so something I was working on behind the scenes this week, I didn't quite get done, was changing how this deed info file works. And what I would like it to look like is just like the deed IDs to whatever, it's just a list of IDs and the information. Because right now, the information about a deed is tied up in its UI location. So if you want to know about the first skirmish instance deed, you got to go to skirmishes, skirmish instances, and then look at the first one, and then you have all of this information about it. But until that is done, what else do we have? Okay. So, get conflicting quest complete. And the completion window. Let's go ahead and restore my old data file. There's a cat eating behind me. Crunch. Okay, awesome. Let's come on in and look at these errors. Could not find deed ID for stuff and things. So, where did we set that error message? That was in the get deed ID from indices. And what it would be nice to do is actually spit out the name of what that is. Now we have a function. It's called get fully qualified deed name. And it's called that because it includes both the page and the tab and the deed name. So we're going to go ahead and stick that at the end of this debug statement. Try it again. Might have been something to do with the upgrade. Let's come on in here again. Well, I sure didn't write that correctly. Gonna need to actually concatenate that in there or else it won't work. Okay. Oh, of course. We're getting a bunch of errors because of all of the categories, I would guess. So let's take a look at 54329. So five, goodness, so many. 329. 329 is indeed looking like a category. The real question is, why are we getting called that for all of these categories? We should not do that. So, the real question is, what's going on here? Why is this happening? So one thing that we can do, and this comes back to the LOTRO API. What are the things we can do? And one of the things we can do is call get call stack. And we can just spit that right out. And so debug turbine.engine get call stack and see what happens. Now it's going to produce a lot of text, and that's okay. We're only really going to care about the last couple of these. And we can see we're in get deed ID from indices, which came from get deed complete. In refresh deed view and function drop main window. Okay. So main win 988. Let's take a look at that. Okay. So we're trying to get information about it. Okay, so what we want to make sure is that I think I want to save this error message, not just tamp it down, because we are looking for the completed status, even if this is a category. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. In fact, where are we getting? Okay, we're getting hide category from up there. So we should say local completed equals false. Actually, where is completed being used? Okay, let's say completed equals false. If not is category, then same thing. We're going to go ahead and initiate that. And is making in chat says, "Are you a programmer for the game?" What a fun question. I am not. I am just a person who really enjoys making plugins for Lord of the Rings Online. And so my purview is entirely plugins, which you can get to from the plugin manager, system plugin manager. And you can find a whole bunch of them over at lotrointerface.com. So lotrointerface.com. Specifically, I'm working on the deed tracker plugin today, which looks like this and gives you a separate way to track which of your deeds are complete, which ones are outstanding, separate from the deed log, which doesn't tell you about deeds you haven't started, or hidden deeds. Oh, Caledonian, great. So you got that working. The import process from LOTRO Companion into DTracker, and you're working on loading the information for each character. Awesome. Well, let me know how that goes for you. That being said, is making. If you have questions about Lord of the Rings Online, it's possible I might know the answer, and I'm always willing to take guesses on things that I don't know about. Well, I don't know about always. I'm frequently willing to do that, though. Okay, so we've gone ahead and hopefully stopped doing the thing that was causing a massive number of errors. So we're going to go ahead and remember to delete these files first. Oh, sorry, unload the plugin first, then come on in. Let's see if we get that same errors. Cool, we're still getting some. Is a new player, just started, level 11 Elf Hunter. Welcome. Elf Hunter is a classic combination. If I wasn't playing a minstrel, I would probably be playing a hunter. I really like ranged damage classes, and a hunter is a classic one. Alright, so what's going on in this function? 964. Get deed skip. Well, that's where we're getting the is category. Okay, so in get deed skip 755, sure seems like we've got some duplicated functionality going on here. 755. Oh, is already complete. Awesome. What we want. We want to go ahead and hoist up this is category quite a bit. Feels like a really important thing. Categories are an internal fake thing that I do. They look like deeds in the data file, but they allow us to have a little bit more visual division. Like this race and emotes things here, those are those internal categories. And so what we want to do is initialize this is category much sooner. And it occurs to me, this deed skip info, we should really consider getting that more. What's going on? Okay. Okay, so this get deed complete. Same thing actually. We want to go ahead and is already complete equals false, and then if not is category, then as Making says, so far so good. Awesome. Yeah. Hunters can of course do some melee combat, but they're very good at range, and they tend to be able to shoot as far or farther than anyone else. So you can start shooting from far away. Do watch out though. If you're in the stance that lets you shoot while you're moving, you might have a higher chance of missing if you are doing that. So pay attention to whether or not your arrows are actually hitting. Okay, so we have this, but the real question is, why are we not returning is already complete? Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do that, and then in each of the places that calls it, we can go ahead and is complete. We can go ahead and get that information. We'll go ahead and add it in each of these places so that we know it's there, even if we're not using it. So, since we have complete already here, we could actually just use that name. Instead of is complete, I like is complete better, but completed. And then this invocation of completed doesn't need to be there at all. Okay, so that was interesting. Let's see if that is functional. So we're going to go ahead and restore our state and load. Okay. We didn't see any of those error messages. And actually, what I like about this is we might have reduced some of the... Now, I said to Valerian earlier that I wasn't worried about the timing of things, but calling those functions multiple times for the same result feels like a waste. And so now we're doing that less. For every deed that we're putting into the UI, we're calling one less redundant function. That's neat. Seems like that might help. Okay, so where else do we have this? We have is complete. Great. And then here, yes, we get is already complete. We can go ahead and grab that. We don't need to call that function. Now this is just, oh, that is a set deed complete, yeah. Okay, so we're making use of the is already complete that we're getting back. And the important thing is that function was also just calling get deed complete. So if we come back in there, that's just calling get deed complete, but importantly, not if it's a category. Okay, so there we're going to use that. Great. Here is complete. Let's see what else we're doing. Here we're getting a save entry, but that doesn't feel necessary because we're only using it for its existence. So if is complete, then that, otherwise other things, get rid of that call to get save entry. Don't need it. That's very exciting. Okay. I like it. So let's go ahead and come on back here. This was... What was this? This was a bug that we saw. So, we removed extra calls to get deed complete. So, don't need that anymore. And then in globals, nothing there. Oh, Little Redhead has pointed out, for hunters, blue stance lets you run around and hit. Red stance is stand still. You can auto attack in red, but those arrows miss a lot if you're moving. I'm almost certainly definitely thinking about that. Okay, so is already complete. Done. Cool. So that get call stack feels excessive. We probably don't want to commit that. Or do we? I don't know. 678. Let's go ahead and remove that. Okay, so is category is false. We're hoisting up that is category initialization. Can't believe I did that. Okay. Holding off. What did we just do there? Oh my goodness. So that's line number 746. Set it to false. If this is true, then set this to true. Why? Why? Why did I do that instead of setting it to the result of is category? Okay. It's so painful sometimes to see what I did in the past. So, is category equals the result of is category. Thank you. Goodness. So, instead of initializing is category to false, and then if the result of is category is true, then setting is category to true, we're just not going to mess with any of that because that's nonsense. Cool. Then, we're going to go ahead and conditionally get the value of is already complete, because if we're not a category, it's not going to happen. There is no deed ID. Okay. Here's where we're returning that is already complete. Here's where we're using is complete. Variable name change, but it means we do very little other changing here. Oh, that one wasn't there. Is complete just felt better. Is already complete just was a little too verbose. And then, yeah, we no longer need to get a save entry or check for it because we already had the knowledge of whether we were complete. Love it. Okay. Well, there's so much to do, and we're running up almost at 2 hours here. So it is tempting to hold off on starting anything new. In which case, if I were going to not start any new development, would I do anything else for the last couple of minutes here? I don't know what to do if it's not plugin development. Let's go look at get conflicting quest. It's at the top of the list here. Okay, so we have a get conflicting quest complete. This is using I, J, and save index. And we can see that in the quests, these are nestled up the same way. And that could be a problem. So let's go ahead and give a little look at this and see if that gives us thoughts on where to go. So, looking for those here. All right. So, the way this works is sometimes in the Lord of the Rings Online, they have deeds and quests which have the same name, which is frustrating. And so, we have been doing these quests in IJ save index instead of by the corresponding deed. So for instance, 6, 12, 25. Let's take a look at that. So, deed info. This file's unmanageable. So 6, we're in Eriador. 12, we are in Enedwaith. 25, we are in this line. Well, that's odd. 6, 12, 25. Why would that one be such a thing? Well, that just raises more questions. Oh, of course, we're looking at save index. The save index 25 is up here. There we go. So, Little Wonders. Apparently, there's a quest. Little Wonders. Let's go take a look at that. So there is a quest that starts with one of the little wonders, and there's also a deed that ends by finding all of the little wonders. So when you complete the quest, we cannot tell from the deed tracker's perspective which one you just did. It just says completed little wonders. And we are left to wonder which one of those two was just finished. Now, this is a single completion quest. You can only do it once per character. So once you have completed the Little Wonders quest, the next time we see completed Little Wonders, we know that it was for the deed. Has to be, because there's only two of them, you already did one of them. Functionally, however, you cannot complete the one without the other, but it would be perhaps egotistical of us to assume that you would never play without the deed tracker. So we can't assume that the first time we see Little Wonders it must be the quest. It just probably is the quest. It might even be worth calling that out in the UI. I don't know. So what we want to do is make sure that this plugin function for getting the conflicting quest completion, we want these quests to be stored in the same way, I think. Let's come on in and see what we're missing here. Okay, so the conflicting quests were never embedded as part of this deed info, which I suppose makes sense. Instead, we have conflicting quests here. And this is another place where IJK is haunting us. So here, this is meant to parallel the structure of the deeds with everything that implies. If you move something, you've got to come in and make sure you remember to move everything here. It's a maintainability nightmare. So we would like this conflicting quest to instead just be by deed ID, probably. Because in this case, if there's an entry for I, J, and K, it means there is a conflicting quest for this deed. A better name for this would have been deeds that are conflicted by quests. Because this is not, well, this is the information about the quest, though. This tells us what the quest name is. Yeah, conflicting quests and where to find them. Okay, so what it would be nice to have is that IJ save index. Use that instead. Or possibly in addition to, but basically instead. So that's going to be a start. So conflicting quests. Okay, so conflicting quests uses the same IJ save index to isolate deeds. Conflicting quests in conflicting quests.lua is an example of this. So need to change all IJ save index to deed ID. But then everything that uses that, which as we can see is most of the conflicting quests dialogue, but also, let's see, deed or quest dialog. Okay, so we're going to need to get the quest name from these things. Okay. Now we have an IJ and K, so we're going to be able to do that same thing. We're going to be able to get a deed ID here, and then plug that into conflicting quests deed ID quest name. Awesome. Okay, that's good. The disambiguate window. How is that different than deed or quest window? Who can say? So same thing, we have a get string ij save index, but in order to have the ij save index, we already have an I, j, and k. So we can use that to get the deed ID and use that in here. Cool. And then finally, the conflicting quests.lua has this entry, but also does deed quest exist? Again, we're using that ij save index. So that's a question. Do all callers of does deed quest exist have ijk? Because we do have that lookup from ij save index to deed ID, but that would be desirable not to have to make use of that in the long run. So having an ID, or for now, having an ijk will get us where we want to go. Okay, same thing here, same thing here. Another function, same thing, does deed have conflicting quest? And that. Okay, was there announcement of conflicting quest? And check for delayed text. What is going on here? Check for delayed text. And we should make a note here. A specific issue for skirmishes. Checking for delayed text in skirmishes is important because so many skirmish names are the same name as their quest and deed. Or the name of the quest in the skirmish is the same as the name of the deed in the skirmish. And it makes for problems. But same thing here. All we need is check for delayed text. We'll need a second lookup table for just the skirmish instance deeds for check for delayed text. Okay. And that's it. So we have previewed those places that are using the conflicting quest structure, which we saw up here. And we've kind of mentally convinced ourselves that each one of them can be converted over to the new system of just indexing by deed instead of I, J, and save index. As long as we can answer yes to these questions. So we're going to go ahead and restructure this a little bit. Okay, so if we can answer in the affirmative for these three questions, and we've convinced ourselves that we can do this thing, then at that point we can restructure the conflicting quest table. It's just going to be a pain to hunt down each one of those IDs, but it's no big problem. We can restructure that and restructure all of the places that access it. We could even add an accessor function or two so that there's only one place that actually digs into that table. That would be nice. Most of the uses are just in the same file where it's defined, which is nice. And feels a little object-oriented, even though it's not at all. But ideally, those other couple of places that are using this table, we could just add a few functions for them. For instance, you want the quest title? Let's add a get conflicting quest title function here so that they can just call that. Of course, it does sort of have the same problem of what are you passing to that, I, J, and K, deed ID, whatnot. Okay. But I think that's a good idea. It's good enough idea that I want to go ahead and get it into here. add enough accessor functions, so non-conflicting quests.lua uses don't look directly at that table. Okay. Goodness. Caledorian says, I follow the instructions, I hit the start button, and it seems to be doing nothing. Not populating dtrack, nor is it showing a character in the panel yet to call any information. So, Caledorian, which start button are you talking about? Are we looking at... the only start button I know about is the start button on the LOTRO companion. So are we talking about you went to the import in LOTRO companion and you hit the start button here? If that's the case, one of the most common things that you need to do is when you're running LOTRO companion, run it import Okay. If you are not already, make sure that you run LOTRO Companion as an administrator. Usually, for Lord of the Rings Online, when it first starts up, it elevates to being an administrator. Oh, can this program change your computer? So it can do some updates at the beginning. And so if LOTRO Companion is not at the same elevation as LOTRO, in this case, they both would need to be administrator, then it just can't look and see what's going on with LOTRO. So that's a big thing, is making sure that if you see that message, let's see, can we even see that on stream? I don't know if we can see that. Well, unsure if anyone can see that, but I'm saying a message saying, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? That's what we're talking about, is that elevation. Black screen, yeah. The elevation prompt is also very special in that you're not allowed to see it from programs like OBS. And so when you see that prompt, most of us will just say, okay, yes, because I want LOTRO to work. Doesn't normally matter, but with LOTRO with LOTRO Companion, it does need to be running at that same level. So you just manually right-click on your shortcut, go to More, Run as Administrator. You'll get a same pop-up. Do you want to let that happen? And so that's like the number one thing. If you have structured it correctly, you can have a shortcut run so that your LOTRO doesn't do that. If those are just buzzing sounds in your ears, don't worry about it. But it is possible to pass the -no raw parameter to your LOTRO client so it doesn't try to do those things. Is it no raw? It's something. As one of the optional parameters kind of prevents it from trying to do that every single time. And then it just happens when you need to do updates. Caledorian, that was an issue. It's doing something now. Awesome. So you should see the update status happening, and then once it's done, you'll hopefully see result import finished. You'll need to, if you care about this for your imports, it doesn't matter for the deed tracker, but if you care about tracking what's in your storage, your shared storage, or your wardrobe, you do need to open those first. That information is not pulled down by default when you first log in. It's pulled down the first time you do those things. So if you want those to be included in the scan, just pop up in your wardrobe, your shared storage, your storage first, and then do the scan. Okay, awesome. Just mostly interested in deeds. Yeah, I get that. Sometimes I think about quests as well, especially when we're getting towards the end of content over here on Treebeard. And I'm like, did we have any quests in Enowith that we haven't done yet? Let's find out. And that's a great way to do it, because otherwise it's manual checking them off, because I haven't succumbed to the temptation to write a plugin to do that yet. Okay. Neat. Okay, so that'll be a future step, is coming in and refactoring how the conflicting quest works in our ongoing attempt to rip out all of his IJK stuff, except where the UI is concerned. Awesome. Okay, well, I think, Caledorian, I'm glad to hear you're making progress. If you have any more problems, feel free to come back next week. I'll be streaming here, I think. What's next week? It's the 3rd, well away from any holidays. I'll be streaming again next Tuesday. Same time, I start about, 1:30 Eastern time? Let's see, Tuesdays. No, it's not on that schedule. Okay, yeah, so sometime between 1:30 and 2, I start, normally go for about 2 hours, depending on what's going on. And so feel free to bring that back and try to say what's working, what's not. I'd be curious to know how it goes for you. All right. Did I ever hear back from Shoreless? Okay. Shoreless is not doing Shoreless Skies later today. They are on holiday break. I don't blame them, but I was having a nice, gentle day today, so it felt like a good day to stream. And with that, Little Redhead has pointed out, between 1:30 to 2 p.m. Eastern United States time, because Little Redhead goes between 11:30 and sometime after 1:30. Haldoran says, how long do you think it will take to generate the info, as my character is level 123 at the moment? So when you do that import, the LOTRO companion import, the whole thing should take not too long. Here's an example of it working for me. Where is that? Okay, so here's how it looks on my machine, Caldorian. When I hit start, I'm only level 71, but we immediately see some stuff filling in. This is going to depend on the speed of your machine and how much stuff your character has done. A higher level character will have completed more deeds, more quests, and all of that, and it'll take a little bit longer to import. But you should see progress happening during the import process for LOTRO Companion. If you don't, LOTRO Companion can be a little finicky. So if you're not getting imports here, you might try doing just a reboot of your machine at some point and then give it another try. Because if you're not seeing any progress happening, or if it just sort of stalls out, the easiest thing to do is restart your whole computer at some point, launch just LOTRO Companion, log in with your character, but don't go running around doing a whole bunch of things. Just, right after you log in, try to do the import, just standing still. It'll increase your chances of success. There's a Discord server linked to from the LOTRO Companion help. I think in the About, there's a Discord link. So if you continue to run into problems, there's some pinned comments in the support channel where you might find helpfulness, and then there's also people who can maybe give you some tips about how to make it work. Okay. Hopefully that was a helpful enough answer. And then, where did my other folder go? Caldorian says, it's working. You assume something like 30 to 40 minutes. I certainly hope not. But my highest level character is not a full completionist. And so it's hard for me to get a sense of what is it like for a character who's 140 and has done everything, for instance. It's a work in progress. Awesome. Cool. Well, happy to have you back next week. Tell me how it's gone for you, if you have any questions or concerns then. Either way, I think that's all we are going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you here next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.